Welcome back. Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Wednesday, September 17th. It is 7 a.m. on the button on the East Coast. Coming up this hour at 7:30 this morning, my exclusive interview with the governor of Virginia. Glenn Youngkin will be here, along with the CEO of Eli Lilly. Dave Ricks will join us. But first, there is this. President Trump signing an executive order yesterday extending the TikTok deadline for a fourth time after discussions in Madrid led to a framework deal between the U.S. and China. Chinese platform ByteDance now has until December 16th to divest U.S. operations. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that TikTok's U.S. business would be controlled by an investor consortium, including Oracle, Silver Lake, and Andreessen Horowitz, with U.S. investors holding a roughly 80% stake and Chinese shareholders owning the rest. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent foreseeing a broader trade deal with Beijing by November. Yesterday on this program, I spoke with Trade Representative Jameson Greer about all of this. Watch.
We believe that President Trump has, in fact, resolved this issue, balancing the national security needs of the United States with the economic realities of having TikTok operating in the United States of America.
What would a good trade deal with China look like, Ambassador?
Something where trade is more balanced and where we're trading in goods that are, frankly, non-sensitive. We want to be able to trade with China, but we want to do it in a way that's healthy and good for our economy. We can't have all these huge amounts of imports flooding our country, being dumped onto our market, undermining our workers, undermining our manufacturers. We need to be able to export to them. We have to provide market access. And for many years, that's not what the Chinese have wanted. So it's not an easy thing to achieve.
Joining me now is White House Senior Counsel for Trade and Manufacturing, Peter Navarro. Peter, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What is your take on all of this? With the TikTok framework now being worked out, do you think there is still a chance to secure the country, have national security, even though Chinese investors will own a portion of the U.S. business?
The important thing in terms of who's buying TikTok, Maria, is Oracle. The other two partners are simply money. Oracle is the technology that can help protect Americans from the Chinese basically stealing our information and using that information to do what they frequently do, which is hack our networks, steal our secrets, and attack our credit network. So Oracle's the key here, and I have the greatest respect for the people at Oracle. So that's really the linchpin of that deal. And more broadly, I think Jameson Greer had it framed exactly right, that we need to have a trading relationship with China whereby we're not running huge trade deficits and we're not exporting sensitive products, which can be used by the Chinese basically to attack us or the Philippines or everybody in between. So, look, trust in Trump. He's going to talk with President Xi again on Friday. Scott Bessent signaled positivity. But in the clear light of day, Maria, let's also understand this, and I was there. In the first term, it took me and Bob Lighthizer in the trenches about 2 years to come up with a deal with China. They shook our hands on it, and then at the last minute, they walked away from it. And then we had to spend another year until we got what was called the skinny deal in January of 2020, and they shook our hands on that and then did not fulfill the deal. So we're very clear-eyed about the difficulties of these negotiations. It's trust but verify. But so far, President Trump is doing a beautiful job negotiating. Scott and Jameson are very able in terms of sitting across from the Chinese and working out the details. And as the boss says, let's see what happens. But you and I both know, Maria, that nothing is more complicated than our relationship with China across economics and national security.
Yeah, and the president.
7 deadly sins. I said it once, I'll say it again. There's just 7 different ways they go after us.
Absolutely, and they're coming at us aggressively, increasingly. But the president, has used tariffs as a great weapon here already, generating what, almost $200 billion in revenue. What's your take on this IEEPA case in terms of the courts trying to stop President Trump? Can you walk us through what could be a backup plan Peter, in terms of whether or not these court cases go against the president? What is the backup?
The backup plan is the minority dissent in that whole decision, Maria. It was a very political decision, as you well know. Courts around America are needlessly politicized, making partisan decisions. The 7 judges who ruled against the Trump administration, 6 of them were Democrats. One of them was a H.W. Bush rhino who was a free trader. The 4 people who dissented, that was a beautiful dissent led by a judge named Taranto. And it's a roadmap, as I've written about, for the Supreme Court to deal with the key issues, whether we have a national emergency, whether tariffs can be used for the regulation of imports, whether we're in a permanent situation with the tariffs, which we clearly are not. So the backup plan is the Supreme Court basically ruling in our favor. With respect to that, of course, we have a plan B, but that's not something we want to think about now or talk about now until this case gets to court. It will be catastrophic. I totally agree with Donald John Trump on this. If the Supreme Court rules against us, it will be catastrophic for this country. And the Fed today, I mean, it bears on all of this. It's like what tariffs have done, Maria, and nobody understood this when we were going forward. The tariffs have turned what was a fiscal cliff and a huge negative situation with a rising national debt into somewhere where we can actually pay down our debt by trillions upon trillions of dollars. Now, what does that mean? It pays down our debt, but it also keeps our interest rates down because we don't have to finance that debt, and that funnels through to the housing market, mortgage rates, consumer credit. And these tariffs in and of themselves are amazing in terms of going back to what was our future before 1913 and the income tax law was passed, when we as a country were strong, we had strong domestic manufacturing, and we were able to pay for everything because of tariff revenues protecting our industries.
Well, it's just incredible. I mean, talking about, Scott Bessent saying he's expecting more than $300 billion in revenue this year. And when you start tallying that up over a 10-year period, you're talking about a real significant move.
$7 trillion.
$7 trillion. Wow.
$7 trillion. It'll pay down. If you looked at a big, beautiful
That's unbelievable.
bill, it'll pay down our debt by $2, $3, $4 billion when everything's netted out. It's a beautiful thing. And let's remind everybody, there's no inflation, none. Jay Powell, memo to Jay. No inflation, my friend. The producers eat it. China's eating it. Europe's eating. Everybody's eating it. Because they need to be in our markets and they know they've been cheating us. That's the brass knuckles reality, Maria. Well, the world knows they cheat us, and we're just asking for fairness. We're getting it because of Donald John Trump. Yeah,
you're right. Look, I want to get your take on the Fed. You brought up Jay Powell. Markets this morning are basically unchanged. All 3 major indices pulling back at the close yesterday. After all these weeks of record highs, we've had a melt up in stocks. But the Fed's decision comes today at 2 p.m. Eastern. Jay Powell will then speak at 2:30 Eastern about the economy. It's widely expected we will finally see a rate cut today, Peter, by a quarter point. Traders are pricing in 3 cuts by the end of the year. And, we all know President Trump says he's been way too late. Lisa Cook is going to be on the Fed board. She'll be part of that decision-making today after a federal appeals court blocked the president from immediately firing her. But you've got Stephen Moran, part of those discussions as well. He'll also be part of the decision-making after being confirmed by the Senate this week. President Trump says he'll have an influence on the decision. What is your expectation for the Fed? And do you think we're talking about a string of rate cuts, or is this going to be one and done, or what?
We're 100 basis points at least over where we should be. We're over 4. Okay. Europe's at 2. China's at 1.5. Japan's at 0.5. That's disequilibrium. It hurts our trade balance. It hurts everybody who's trying to get a mortgage. It's frozen up the housing market. It should be 50 today, and it should be another 50 at the next meeting. That's where it should be. Now, Powell and the Democrats who are currently controlling the Federal Reserve are making partisan decisions. Powell has been a disaster. People talk about an attack on Powell as an attack on Fed independence. It's not. It's Fed incompetence. And Lisa Cook is part of that. Maria, you know that I was sent to prison for defending the Constitution. I was in prison with people who did what Lisa Cook was alleged to have done. And they were there for many years, and they had their houses seized and their businesses seized, and they're paying restitution. This is not a slap on the wrist what this woman did, and she shouldn't be on the Fed right now. She doesn't have to have a trial and be convicted for just cause, okay? For the president has the right now to get her out there, and she went to a liberal judge, and she's sitting there, and she's probably trying to do a plea bargain now. If it's true what happened, she should be in prison, because I was there with guys who did stuff just what she's alleged to do. That's what the law says. This is a serious crime, and how dare she do this if in fact the facts are what they seem to be, Maria.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought this up, because more disclosures around your conviction, going to prison, and they're really stunning, Peter. The tape that was released, Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley exposing all this political weaponization this week against conservatives at the committee's FBI oversight hearing yesterday. Your name was brought up. Watch this.
My investigative work has also exposed the political way in which Peter Navarro was investigated and prosecuted. When FBI agent Thibault found out that Biden's DOJ would prosecute Navarro, he said, "Wow, great." That's a quote, unquote. Navarro's interaction with the FBI was unfairly described as, quote, unquote, the word combative. That intervention with Navarro was just as the justification to later aggressively arrest him. Yet time and again, the American justice system has been weaponized against President Trump and his associates, such as Peter Navarro, with reckless abandon.
Peter, the way you were treated is just shameful. He also released a tape of the conversation that you had when they showed up at your door with the subpoena. What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, I want to thank Senator Chuck Grassley and his staff for getting to the bottom of the weaponization of our government. Certainly, what's been uncovered about me just puts an underscore of the fact that I was a political prisoner. Everybody involved in my imprisonment was a Democrat. Everyone involved. And Chuck Grassley's uncovering it. But more importantly, I was just part of a broader pastiche, if you will, of the worst political attack on our presidency in the history of this country. If you look at the FBI agent Giardina, who put me in leg irons and exulted when I was indicted, that man was part of just about everything, from the Steele dossier and Crossfire Hurricane to the Mueller report to Arctic Frost to Operation Crimson River. All of these were efforts. They were an insurrection. They were designed to get President Trump out of office when he was in. They were election interference. They were designed to stop him from being elected. And I'll tell you this, this is the age of accountability, okay? If we don't hold these people accountable, they'll do it again. Can you imagine Adam Schiff as the majority leader of the Senate, or Cory Booker as the majority leader of the House after that spectacle we watched with Kash Patel? These people, they have no conscience. And Schiff himself, again, he lied to Congress. He was part of the hoax that he pushed. I mean, that guy should be investigated. And if we don't do this, Maria, if we don't hold these people accountable, if we don't hold them accountable, they're just going to keep doing it again. And that's why I'm talking about, continue to talk about my imprisonment. As you know, I went to prison so you won't have to, is the book I wrote. And it's just a warning, Maria. It's a warning to everybody in America that if they can come for me and Donald Trump, put Steve Bannon in prison, bankrupt Rudy Giuliani, take away the law cards of Jeff Clark and John Eastman, and kill Charlie Kirk and try to kill President Trump twice.
Unbelievable.
There's got to be accountability because they're just going to keep doing it
Peter,
again.
you're right. You're right. I mean,
Yeah.
it is so shameful. I mean, the level that they have stooped to is so extraordinary, and it's unbelievable. I mean, truly is unbelievable. So good for you. Thank God you're safe and you're okay after the ordeal that you went through. Really, I'm proud to know you, Peter. Look, President Trump and the First Lady are just landing via helicopter at Windsor Castle. They are going to be meeting with the King of England, King Charles, and Queen Camilla. Today, they're just coming off of the chopper right now. This is the president's second state visit to London. We're monitoring it. We want to see this meeting when the president emerges from the chopper. He's now coming out in a moment at Windsor Castle in England. Your thoughts now, Peter, in terms of what we might expect from, well, look, we were talking about the potential for a huge technology deal with the UK. Obviously, the Prime Minister is a friend and likes President Trump. You could see that. He speaks highly of him. President Trump is now emerging from the chopper, followed by Melania, who looks absolutely gorgeous right now in her hat. Your thoughts, Peter?
No, I just love this. I just love this president and the First Lady. And he just, I mean, he's everywhere, boundless energy, just getting stuff done. And, you know, the subtext here is one of the first deals we did was with the UK. And it's great for America, what we're doing. And it's great particularly for the working classes, the blue-collar Americans who have seen their jobs and factories disappear. And Donald Trump is all about that. And it's just these political attacks, they just got to stop. I mean, can you imagine a world in 2026 when the Democrats get control of the House and start doing their nonsense again? These people are out of control, and they have to be held accountable. And good for the boss.
Yes.
Good for Melania.
Well, the president met with the Duke and Duchess of Windsor.
There it is.
They're now meeting with the
hat.
King and Queen Camilla right now at Windsor Castle. Really an amazing trip. That's the first time we've seen that a president from the United States has a second state visit, and they invited him for a second time. Peter, great to see you. We so appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We will see you soon.
You take care of yourself, and I appreciate your time, Maria. And you fight the good fight.
Thank you, sir. Peter Navarro. We'll be right back.